Hi everyone, thanks for making a left turn for today, Saturday, December 12th, 2015. I'm George Farrar. Welcome back to the Jack's Left channel and welcome back to History Jacksonville, our continuing series here on the Jack's Left channel, the Left Turn Network at theleftturnetwork.com that looks at the history of Jacksonville. And from now until April 2016, I'm going to be here in the Riverside Avondale neighborhoods talking Jacksonville history as it relates to where I believe one of the most beautiful area neighborhoods is. Not that far from downtown, on the western side of the St. Johns River. We're going to have a great time in the coming months as we go through the winter and then into the spring and as we start to emerge into the summer. All right, so I've got a lot to talk about. And I'm beginning everything right here at Riverside Park. Riverside Park is the second oldest park. Our oldest park is Hemming Park, downtown. The second oldest park, Riverside Park, and I'm going to talk with you about starting out about 1869, right around there, the history of Riverside as it relates to this park and how things have changed over the years. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see here, you see the pond. Things were a little bit different, and you're going to see some pictures from the late 19th, early 20th centuries. And so we've got to start from the beginning, and so we're going to start with John Murray Forbes. Now, he was a railroad executive, did well up north, so in 1868, he bought 500 acres at where now we call Riverside. It used to be called Dell's Bluff. Now, this was after the Civil War. And of course, all of this that you see here wasn't here. So there was not much to see here until they started to plot out Riverside. In 1869, 14 acres were set aside when Riverside was laid out. This particular portion that was bought was donated by Mr. Forbes. Not much was really done with the new park until the 1890s. In the 1890s, 2 lakes were created. They were fed by springs. Paths were built for walking. Before cars, there were carriages drawn by horses. And of course, so that people could kind of get around the park, carriageways were constructed. In 1917, what we know as the old Annie Lytle School building was constructed. It had originally been a wood structure, and it's over further out to the northwest corner of the park. The interesting thing about this park was that it started out at 14 acres, around 14 acres. Where we see now, Park and Post Streets, the park had actually, in the early days, had extended further south. But with all the development in Riverside, it began to be split off, and so what we see now, of course, is what we get. So you'll see in the distance a brick building. That's a maintenance building that was built in the 1940s. We'll get closer to that. We'll talk about the significance of Interstate 95 and the Annie Lytle School, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go further into the park. I first got to know Riverside Park in the early 1990s. You know, when you get your first car, my first car was a 1977 Toyota Corolla, and it was the early 1990s. The first places you can go driving are the neighborhoods right around where you live, and I live out off 103rd Street. Back then, of course, you know, just growing up, I would come into Riverside, and I had opportunities to visit the park and walk around Five Points. And in the early 1990s, also in high school, I had the opportunity to go to the Cummer Gallery of Art and spend lunch on one afternoon with my humanities class here. So, you know, as you grow up, as you get older, I guess you can savor the moments, you can enjoy things. You can, like they like to say, stop and smell the roses, or, as I will tend to do, walk and admire the trees and the hanging moss. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the maintenance area, and as you can see, it looks like there's been renovation to the original building. So this is just a part of the park, and of course now we have a much more broad vista of the lake, the pond. Playground, and just beyond, Park Street. As we get toward the northwestern area of the park, we run right into the high overpasses of Interstate 95. As motorists approach to cross the forewarned bridge just beyond. But an interesting thing I'd like to point out, something really unique. If you think about it, in 1917, when what we know as the old Annie Lytle School was built, you know, the park was very much a part of the front area of the school. Of course, back then, there was no Interstate 95, none of these overpasses. And in just a moment, as we look at pictures and film of the park, you'll get a chance to see what Annie Lytle looked like, the Annie Lytle School looked like. Back then. Until the 1930s, people could actually drive their cars through the park. But they had a problem with racing, speeding through the park, and so people, of course, no longer can drive through the park. In recent years, there's been an effort to improve the park. In the late 1990s, there was a big storm that knocked down a lot of trees. The Riverside Avondale Preservation Group, along with the City of Jacksonville, worked on getting it cleaned up and trying to make the park better. And also, in 2011, I had the opportunity here in this park to come here and to hear some great talks from activists and people concerned about the future of our country in Occupy Jacksonville. So you'll see some pictures from that as well. So, you know, it's that time again, but before I get right to it, I do want to invite you to keep watching the Jack's Left channel, to keep watching the LeftTurnNetwork.com. Check out the George Farrar channel. There's a lot going on. History Jacksonville is big here on the Jack's Left channel, and you're going to see a lot more about the history of Riverside and Avondale in the coming months, and I invite you to keep watching and let me know what you think. And also, we've got different series, Who Runs Jacksonville, our corporate media, that's coming up soon. Also dissenting in Jacksonville, looking at exercising the First Amendment in our city. That's coming up as well. And of course, over on the George Farrar channel, we have Predictions 2016. So I'm really excited, and I hope that you are too, with a lot of what you're seeing and a lot of what I'm able to bring to you. There's something that's great about what we have here. It's something very special, and I'm really excited, and as you know, the best is yet to come. So, as I always say, not only the best is yet to come, but you know what time it is. Let's roll it. everyone. Thanks for making the left turn for Saturday, February 20th, 2016. I'm George Farrar, and History Jacksonville is back, and it's now time to talk about 5 points. I've got 5 points about 5 points to talk about. And first, though you've made the left turn today, always remember at this intersection you must keep right. I have 5 points to make about 5 points. Point number 1. 5 points here, as we know it, start out as a residential area. But in the 1920s, as a result of a lot of development going on, the Florida land boom, it changed over to being used for commercial purposes. It began to change, and you're going to see those changes in just a moment. Point number 2. What is now the Sunray Cinema used to be called the Riverside Theater. It opened in the 1920s. It was going to be a pretty high-priced theater. It initially started out with an admission price of 25 cents in 1920s money, but it was quickly raised to $1.10 when they introduced the first sound technology used in motion pictures, and it was the first sound technology used here in Jacksonville. So they had to raise the admission price to $1.10 in 1920s money, but the steep price resulted in not as much profit, so ultimately they moved the sound equipment to the Imperial Theater downtown. The Imperial Theater no longer stands, and eventually the theater would close, then reopen in the 1930s as a neighborhood theater. It would close again in the 1940s, then reopen as a neighborhood theater with a little bit more luxury, a smoking lounge, and pushback seats. And then in the late 70s, early 1980s, it would open and close. Ultimately, it closed in 1991 to become the nightclub Club 5, which I never had the enjoyment of actually going into. But it then, later on, after Club 5 closed, it reopened ultimately as Sunray Cinema. So I've got a lot to show you about that, and we'll see that in a moment. Point number 3. 5 Points has continued to evolve over the years to meet the needs and the wants of the neighborhood. Point number 4. What we know as 5 Points is undergoing the most massive change that we have seen in years, and you're going to hear more about that in just a moment. Point number 5. Point number 5. The Bohemian spirit is alive and well and will be forevermore in 5 Points. I grew up here in Jacksonville. When I first learned to drive, I would drive my white 1977 Toyota Corolla right through here. I enjoyed it. It was great. It was fun. I had, in the brief time that I had with my brother, he and I enjoyed 5 Points, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. There's something that's special that's here. There's something that's unique that's here. It's something that you will not find on the south side. You will not find it further out on the west side. You will not see it at the town center. It will not be happening at the Orange Park Mall. You will not be seeing it out on the river. It's something different. It's something special, and it is my hope that in the upcoming years, the changes in the development will enhance the ability, the creativity of people to enjoy this beautiful neighborhood, to celebrate, to party, to shop, to talk, to dream, and to possibly make this city even more special. They say one city, one Jacksonville these days, but it is our unique neighborhoods that make the city as a whole. And I'm enjoying bringing this to you today. Now is that special time on every episode of History Jacksonville where I just say it. It's time to bring you some great pictures and film from yesterday and today it's time to say, let's roll it. What you see right now, of course, is Derby on Park, a restaurant right here at the 5 Points intersection. But in Easter 1953, it was a Texaco gas station. And the Fans and Stoves Antique Mall, it was Lovett's Grocery. This used to be the Woolworth Five and Dime store from the late 1930s until 1967. Later on, it would still be a Five and Dime under different names: Economy Five and Dime, Peterson's Five and Dime. I knew this building as the Fuel Coffee House. My brother, John, tried to set me up with a girl inside this building when it was a coffee house called Fuel. And she wasn't having any of it. It's in the process now of changing. It is going to now be what's envisioned to be a beer garden on the ground floor and on the roof. And it's still being decided what will be happening on the second floor. A developer, a businessman, an artist, an inspirational guy named Steve Williams is handling this project. And I would like to say that I think this is a great thing for 5 Points, because here you have Sunray Cinema, and across the street, what is envisioned to be a great place. Again. But there's even more to talk about. The interesting thing is that these, as you can see, have distinctive fronts. This is the arcade building, the Park Arcade building, and at one point there was a miniature golf area inside the building and outside, where people could go and play miniature golf. You would start your game inside, you would work through to the games outside, and then you would end your game inside again. Now, of course, we have all these different stores. There's a lot of change happening. Not that long ago, I had some time to kill here in 5 Points. I was waiting on a friend and didn't have a lot to do, so I came down here to the Fans and Stoves Antique Store. got some neat things. Things will be changing though. Later this year, this store will be closing. We don't know yet what is going to happen here, but there's a lot of change happening. If there's one thing that's constant in 5 Points, it's change. So there's something really amazing going on here, and I'm glad to be able to bring it to you here on History Jacksonville. Hi everyone, thanks for making the left turn for today, Saturday, April 23rd, 2016. I'm George Farrar. Welcome back to the Jack's Left channel. Welcome back to History Jacksonville. And as part of our continuing series here on History Jacksonville, looking at Riverside Avondale, I am here today in front of the historic Willow Branch Library. And I'm also just down from Willow Branch Park, and we're going to check out the creek. Though the park is older than the library, I'd like to first talk about Jacksonville's very own Willow Branch Public Library. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it was built in 1930. It was opened in November 1930, and it's at Cherry and Park Streets here in Riverside. And as a 6-year-old in 1981, I stood outside this library on a field trip. You know, field trips when you're young are pretty wild things. You know, you get on a school bus and you go across town and you're in this different neighborhood, this different place. And you get off the bus and you show up here, and you're told to stand in a line. You stand in a line, and I believe I stood somewhere right here. And what fascinated me on that day in 1981, student at Arlington Heights Elementary School, what fascinated me the most about this building, maybe it really sparked something, who knows, but what intrigued me was the design on this historic library. We were told it's an old library. Amazing time. That's what I remember the most from that field trip. I don't remember a lot. I do remember going on a tour of St. Vincent's Hospital. This library was built in the Mediterranean Revival style, and it was renovated in 1997, had refurbishments in 2004. In 2013, Mayor Alvin Brown wanted to have this library, along with others, closed. You know, a lot of people stood up about it. They went downtown. I know I went downtown to City Hall, the front of City Hall on a hot day in the summer of 2013. And I let my voice be known, let my opinion be known. And the library is open today, and I am enjoying it today. And now we're going to enjoy the park, and you know what time it is. It's time for me to say it. Let's roll it. I'm now in Willow Branch Park. This park has even more history than the library does. It's older. It was constructed in 1916. The campaign to get the park built was led by a man named John Griffin, who was a city councilman at the time. And we have now, as a result, an amazing park. We have a playground, a softball field, and lots of room to walk, to relax. The creek, you can walk your dog. In the 1920s, there was a lot of growth in the city of Jacksonville, particularly in Riverside, Avondale, and so the park was extended south of Park Street, and I'll take you there momentarily. But first, let's check out Willow Branch Creek and more of the park. As is common in some of Jacksonville's older parks, you'll still see a sign back in the days when the city of Jacksonville really invested in beautiful parks for the city, for the people of the city. And these were grand construction type projects. Springfield comes to mind, the Confederate Park, and what's now Henry Clutho Park, which was originally called Springfield Park. You know, an earlier episode of History Jacksonville looked at it, and we see a commonality here, all the way out here in Riverside, in Willow Branch Park, as the park is very much a part of Willow Branch Creek, which extends this way. You know, a lot of people, of course, do go to Rome to see yesteryear, to see what you might call ruins. But in many ways, though this is fully functional over the creek and over holding Park Street, this bridge itself brings back thoughts you might have of a yesteryear that's long gone. But you know, yesteryear can come into this year. It can if the people want it. We can have beautiful places to get fresh air, to chill out, to enjoy ourselves, to exercise. We can have these great spaces. Here's an example. Imagine a more ornate, more safe, pedestrian-friendly, pet-friendly even, kid-friendly crossover over the creek in this park. I would remark one more thing about the library. It's the oldest continuously running library, not counting, of course, closures for construction, renovation, refurbishment, in the city library system. So what we really are here is, you could say, the epicenter of Jacksonville history, emerging through the 20th century, and here we are, right here in 2016 in the 21st century. Can we, as a people here in Jacksonville, make this park more of a 21st century park, not a park as much of yesteryear, restoring yesteryear, of course, but providing people with, as we enjoy the trees, as we enjoy the fresh air, that we have an environment that's more inviting, and essentially would represent a commitment of the people to leisure space, and in, you know, an opportunity to get out and really see the neighborhood, the city in which we live and try to thrive and grow. The challenges are many in this city. The question is, does the leadership, Republican, Democrat, or what's it, have the capacity, the competence, the capability to transform our parks so that they make it through the 21st century, one day to approach the 22nd. It's time for me to stroll down Willow Branch Avenue on this April morning, and we're going to look more at the southern end of this beautiful park, and we're going to start to transition into Homes of Riverside and Avondale, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. First, let's check out the neighborhood. As we go further south towards the St. Johns River, we see that the park begins to look a lot nicer. And this is the park extending back up towards Park Street. Lots of shade, lots of fresh air, and lots of sun if you want it. As the clouds drift away. Let's head on down to the river. Riverside Avenue, April 23rd, 2016. Here we see an example of the balustrades reconstructed. There's hope for our parks. The hope is in the future, but it is in the hearts of the people of our city, especially the people of Riverside Avondale. I'm now at the southern end of Willow Branch Park as Willow Branch Creek emerges out into the St. Johns River. Let's enjoy the serenity that is Willow Branch Park on April 23rd, 2016. This is a great place to enjoy some serenity, and this morning to enjoy the great aroma of the greenery sprouting on this April morning. It's a beautiful day. Don't let it get away. Hi everyone. Thanks for the left turn for today, Saturday, May 7th, 2016. I'm George Farrar. Welcome back to the Jacksonville channel. Welcome back to History Jacksonville, and within History Jacksonville, our continuing series about Riverside Avondale. I'm here, right here in Boone Park, named after William Boone. Back many, many years ago, he would buy up railroad locomotives. He would rebuild them, and he would lease them out to various businesses and industries throughout North Florida, South Georgia. In 1926, the city of Jacksonville bought his land along with the land of others to construct this park, Boone Park, right here in Avondale. And what a beautiful day May 7th has turned out to be. And you know, it's always great to film in such great weather. And I'd like to talk with you before we jump into some amazing pictures and film of historic Riverside Avondale. I want to talk with you about how all this came to be. Now, in the first episode of our continuing series on Riverside Avondale, when I was at Riverside Park, I talked with you about John Murray Forbes and how he bought up some acreage to develop Riverside. And it's important to remember that in 1887, the city of Jacksonville annexed Riverside, and that made possible for city services, a lot of amenities, to come to this area. Now, as the land began to be sold off from the Magnolia Plantation, there was a development that people were trying to put together in the 1880s. It was called Edgewood. Now, not to be confused with what we know now as Edgewood. This was further towards this direction, and though in the 1880s they tried to put it together, it did not succeed. But ultimately, an enterprising man named Telfair Stockton bought the land, and he envisioned, designed through platting, what we know now as Avondale. And the interesting thing about Avondale, it was designed specifically as a neighborhood for the rich and well-to-do, and this was in the 1920s, during the Florida land boom. A lot of land bought, a lot of development, a lot of building going on in the 1920s right here. Now, what's amazing, ultimately, is what resulted, of course. The history, and you're going to see a lot more of that in a moment. And there's been sometimes a struggle between businesses and residents about how far development goes here. In 1974, an organization called Riverside Avondale Preservation was formed, starting out as opposition to an expressway that was going to be put through the neighborhoods. That expressway, of course, did not happen, and there's been a lot of effort to rehabilitate, renovate historic homes here in Riverside and Avondale. And I've got a lot to show you, and I'm glad that you're with me here today. Now, here's the plan. We're going to look today at Park and King Streets. We're going to look more here in Avondale, and in future episodes, there will be 2 episodes more in this Riverside Avondale series of History Jacksonville, and one will be about Cummer Gallery, and the other will be about Memorial Park, and so our visit to Memorial Park will end the Riverside Avondale series within History Jacksonville. It's been very enjoyable, and I want to bring you the flavor, the unique experience that you have when you come here. This is an amazing, beautiful, beautiful place, and you know, I think we all want to be vigilant, mindful of maintaining the balance between living, working, partying, commuting, and playing, really enjoying ourselves in today's Jacksonville. A lot has happened since 1887 in this area. In the early 1900s, you could actually go out hunting wild game out here. Okay, so now years go by, things change. We had a lot of living going on here, a lot of working and playing. And the question will be, what will happen in the next 100 years of Riverside Avondale? So you know what time it is, and I know what time it is, so it's time for me just to say it. There's so much to see, there's so much to talk about and think about. Let's roll it. Just across from Boone Park, Vanward Avenue and Valencia Road, you get a flavor of the different styles of houses over the years. Notice the expansive sidewalks, notice the beautiful trees. Edgewood Avenue and St. John's Avenue. St. John's Avenue. Avondale on St. John's Avenue. Shopping and restaurants in Avondale. St. John's Avenue, May 7th, 2016. A busy Ingleside and St. John's Avenues. Shopping came to Avondale in the 1920s with the Florida land boom, and they're still shopping and dining and having a day on the town in 2016. We're at the corner of Park and King Streets. Now, what you see across here is the Il Desco Modern Italian Restaurant. But Years ago, I knew it as a drugstore. Change keeps happening, time keeps on, as that song goes, slipping into the future. This commercial district was developed as the Whiteway Corner. It was built in 1927, the original buildings. Of course, the Walgreens across the street is modern. Riverside Baptist Church. These buildings were built in the 1920s through the 1940s. The original buildings were built by the Nazareth brothers. There's a natural struggle between commercial business owners, people who have offices, residents, whether it's in apartments or it's in one of these historic houses. There is this struggle, but you know, there's a balance to it all, and I think that in many ways there's been a concerted effort to keep this balance to where everyone can do what they want to do, whether it's live, play, work, entertain. So it's my hope that in the future we're going to see a lot more coordination, cooperation between the city, citizens, business owners, so that we can continue to enjoy these beautiful neighborhoods and also to be able to shop, be able to eat, dine, hang out with your friends, do whatever it is you want to do right here in Riverside, Avondale. Hi everyone, thanks for the left turn for today, Saturday, June 11th, 2016. I'm George Farrar. Welcome back to the Jack's Left channel. Welcome back to History Jacksonville. And here I am on Riverside Avenue in front of the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens, previously known as the Cummer Gallery of Art. I'm pleased to bring you today here on History Jacksonville, within our Riverside Avondale series, a show about our Cummer Gallery of Art. That's how I knew it coming up here in Jacksonville. In the early 1990s, I visited the gallery. I visited the gallery with my English humanities class with Miss Atwood, Forest High School, back when it was called Forest High School, now known as Westside High. I'm pleased to bring this to you today. It's a hot day. We're going to check out the amazing gardens. So you know what time it is? It's time for me just to say it. Let's roll it. The sounds of Riverside in Jacksonville, Florida, Saturday, June 11th, 2016. Spiritualized life, symbolized by the winged figure of youth, rises triumphant from the swirl of war's chaos, which engulfs humanity and faces the future courageously. Hi everyone, thanks for the left turn for today, Saturday, June 25th, 2016. I'm George Farrar. Welcome back to the Jack's Left channel. Welcome back to History Jacksonville, and welcome back to our Riverside Avondale series within History Jacksonville. This is the final episode of the Riverside Avondale series, and I'm here at Memorial Park. I'm going to talk with you today about Memorial Park, and this is a beautiful place. I would say it's one of the most beautiful places here in Jacksonville. Memorial Park is located off Riverside Avenue, and here is a beautiful St. Johns River. There's a breeze coming through. It's a hot morning. They're saying 97, 99 degrees will be the high, but you can always at least try, if you can, to get a breeze on the river. It's always an option here in Riverside. Sometimes it's a strong breeze, sometimes it's a little bit weaker. But what we have is a vibrancy in Riverside and Avondale. In 1918, after the Great War, we know it as World War I, it was suggested by the Rotary Club to construct a park to memorialize the dead, the Florida people who died in the Great War. Charles Adrian Pillars was a sculptor who had a studio in St. Augustine, and he was commissioned to sculpt life. On the inscription on the base, the fountain that the sculpture is on, note that it says spiritualized life. The Olmsted brothers, the sons of Frederick Lowell Olmsted, the famous designer of Central Park in New York City, the Olmsted brothers designed this park. It was dedicated on Christmas Day, 1924. Two bronze eagle sculptures were sculpted by Diane LaFond and Setta, and were dedicated by the Memorial Park Association to replace concrete ones. They were dedicated in 2011. The Park Lane apartments were constructed in the 1920s as part of the effort to develop Riverside in the early days during the 1920s Florida land boom. Back in December 2015, I began the Riverside Avondale series within History Jacksonville to bring to you the history of these amazing neighborhoods, Riverside and Avondale. And I've been pleased to bring this special series within History Jacksonville to you to enjoy. I began in Riverside Park. I grew up here in Jacksonville. I spent most of my life here in Jacksonville. And Riverside and Avondale have a special place in my heart. Whether it was Riverside Park, where in the early 1990s I had a great lunch with friends on a high school field trip, whether it was Willow Branch, where as a youngster in the early 1980s I visited the Willow Branch Library, whether it was 5 Points, driving my 1977 Toyota Corolla on Park Street, and then later in early 2016 driving Park Street again. Whether it was Avondale, the beautiful, beautiful homes, the cool homes of Avondale, and the beautiful spots on the river, and Willow Branch Park, the changing that's happening at Park and King Streets, the change that's happened over the years there, and finally visiting the gardens at the Cummer Gallery. I knew it as Cummer Gallery, now known as the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens. I visited Cummer Gallery back in the early 1990s on that high school field trip. And it was there that I knew that there is something that's special here, and I wanted so much to bring it to you as best that I can. I learned a lot producing these special episodes about Riverside and Avondale, and I had the opportunity to interact with some great folks that make Riverside and Avondale a special place. And I will always value my friendships on Facebook, face-to-face, however we meet. There's some great things that are happening, and I'm glad to be a part of this great place. So, what I'd like to do now is just say it. We know what time it is. It's that time again. It's that time when I bring you some great pictures and film of Memorial Park. I want to thank you for watching History Jacksonville. I want to thank you for those of you who've been regular watchers of this special series about the Riverside and Avondale neighborhoods. In coming episodes of History Jacksonville later this year, I'll be exploring Murray Hill and Ortega, and yes, I'll be back downtown. We need to have a reality check about what's going on downtown, and I'll be all over the place later this year. With the heat of the summer upon us, the heat of our politics will be amazing. It's going to be really hot stuff. I've got a lot planned. I'm going to start talking about our corporate media, and I'm also going to start talking about Lenny Curry's budget. We're going to talk about how the city of Jacksonville gets and spends its money. We've got a lot to talk about. And so, you know what time it is? Let's roll it.
you.